Sorry, I'm good. Sorry, I needed to stand because there's some listing that goes on here, and it's just going to be awful if I try to do it from memory. So I made some corny jokes at the 9 and 11 a.m. service about which service I attend, but since we're all here pretty much every week, there's no point in starting with that silly joke for you guys. So, as you probably know, my name is Zach Eskow, and 5 years ago I moved to Rochester Hills, and that's when I started coming here to St. Paul's. And at 28 years old at the time, and being a young professional, my life was really only moving in one direction, which was forward. And I never really thought that lessons from God would come from actually going backwards, which is about 15 years is what it took me. But shortly after joining St. Paul's, I volunteered to help with youth group activities here at the church. And there are a few better decisions I've made in my life. Over the past 5 years, I'll admit to you I've been living a little bit of a dual life. Mild-mannered professional by day, youth group volunteer by night. That got a lot better laughing at the earlier services. But it's been quite a ride with these youth group kids. I've been to Waterloo, Iowa, Frostburg, Maryland, Reading, Pennsylvania, and of course to Rochester, New York on work trips with these guys. I've been to soccer games and football games, cheerleading competitions, cross-country and track meets, ski meets. I've also been to hockey games. I've seen a number of high school plays and musicals, been to a number of choir concerts, and been serenaded at various band performances. I spend every third Thursday of the month going out to eat with them at some local restaurant. I've gone to Michigan and Michigan State football games simply to visit them while they're at college. I've been hit with water balloons, had my house toilet papered, been told I'm going bald, been told I need to lose weight, been told that my choice of music is lame. And yet, somehow I've still gone home to find several of them breaking into my house so that they could just sit there and watch TV while I was at work all day. I've also spent many nights just going to a local restaurant where I've sat and talked with one or two of the youth at a time while watching the Tigers or Red Wings games. And it's not just all funny stuff or tomfoolery. I've had the real privilege to be with some of these kids during some of the biggest crises of their lives. They've given me a call and I've been able to be there, and that's really serious and special stuff. And even though these matters have consumed an inordinate amount of my time, I wouldn't change a minute of the last 5 years. And why? Because it's clear to me that God is teaching me so much through spending so much time with people who are 15 years younger than me. It's amazing to see life through their eyes, even though I myself wasn't in their shoes but too long ago. And while I certainly hope that they've learned something about Christ from me during our interaction, I think it's appropriate to quote my favorite Christian musician, Mark Schultz, when it comes to this point. Because Mark Schultz, before he made it big time in Christian music, spent 8 years as a reluctant associate minister for a youth group at a big church in Nashville, Tennessee. And after he got done with that experience, he said, "I've learned more about God from those kids than they could ever learn from me." And I feel the same way. Through this youth group, God took an impatient 28-year-old and made him a more patient 33-year-old. God took a 28-year-old curmudgeon and made him a slightly less curmudgeon 33-year-old. God took a person who unwittingly only gave at a leaking pipe level and turned it into waterfall giving. So yes, I'm certain that St. Paul's Youth Group has helped change my life in the ways that God has molded it. Indeed, I have learned more from these kids than they'll ever learn from me, and I doubt they even know how profoundly they've affected my life. Now, St. Paul's has a number of wonderful programs that keep members and friends of the church busy, learning, and growing. And there are certainly fantastic mission programs here where we diligently heed the call to love our neighbor as ourselves and to look after orphans and widows. I know my blessings, and I consider it a privilege to be a member of this church where we have a staff that challenges us spiritually in worship music that's second to none, and a program here like the Core where we can even come for evening worship and have wonderful music here as well. I, though, am going to pledge money to St. Paul's because I want this church to continue to grow and improve on its commitment to those kids and young adults through whom God has so touched my heart. So while I give to help the church overall, I'm especially giving for Grant and Alex and Adam, and for Sabrina and James, and for Dave and Sean and Ryan, and for Brian and Jeff and Craig, and for Maddie and Justin and Allison and Jill, and for Chris and Ryan and Paige, and for Colin and Becca and Charlie and Hannah and Danny, and for Ashlyn and and then the other Alex, and then Graham and Grant, and then the other Alex, and then Kevin, and then Austin and Jenna, and all the kids that are currently in the youth group still. And then, of course, for Cam, who's over there drinking the water, who was a former youth grouper turned groomsman in my wedding. Now, my grandmother passed away in July, and at her funeral, I was privileged to be able to share a few words about her life. And if you're going to comment on my grandmother's life, it begins and ends with her overwhelming generosity. She was a huge lifeline to the Bad Axe community for all that she gave, a passion that surely arose from her realization that she herself had been richly blessed. And I saw the importance of giving and generosity at a young age through her and my grandpa, who are easily the most generous and humble people that I've ever had the joy of knowing. But one verse that was important to them and that I learned at a young age was Luke 6:38. Give and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure you give, it will be given back to you. But I'm not sure if that's literally accurate. Because if my time with the youth group is any indication, the blessings I've received have not matched what I've given. They far exceeded my contributions. So in a few weeks, when it's time to turn in pledge envelopes at this church, I will gladly do so for 4 reasons. First, because it's right to give back to God for the manifold blessings that He's bestowed on my life. Second, because I want to honor my grandmother's life and legacy. Third, because each morning I'm reminded and sometimes have to wrestle with the fact that Christ's innocent blood was shed for me. And fourth, in no small part for those names I listed earlier, who have helped reveal Christ to me and who have so wonderfully altered my life. I look forward to sharing in a great giving privilege with all of you. Thanks be to God for Jesus Christ, who showed us true sacrifice, for a church community that takes seriously its commitment to humanity, and for the continued overflowing and unexpected blessings of God.